Hey guys, how's it going? In today's video, I want to show you one of my favorite ways to line metal or wire framed planters like this one right here. This is a hanging basket. I've got the little chains right here. It's just a lot easier to work with if they are off. So maybe you've seen something like this when you're out and about at an antique or consignment store, or just anything that has kind of like this open structure right here, and you've thought, you know, that would make an excellent planter, but I'm really not sure how to go about lining it. Like, how do I do that? So I just wanted to show you my favorite way. There are several different ways. So the first thing I need to do, because this basket has a point on the bottom, I need to grab this pot. It's just an empty pot I had laying around. So I can set my basket down in it, so I've got a stable work surface. So now we need to line it, and there are several different ways that people like to do this. You can use cocoa fiber, you can use doubled up burlap. There's probably a whole bunch of ways I don't even know about. My favorite thing to use is preserved sheet moss. It looks like this. In fact, I have the bag still. Preserved sheet moss from Super Moss. The reason why I like this one so much is because it stays this nice green color for a really long time, and it comes in nice big chunks like this. So it's definitely not the most inexpensive way, but this basket is such a beautiful like piece of art in and of itself that I want the whole thing to look gorgeous in the end. So the first thing that we do is we take a piece of the moss and we just dunk it in water. This is just a bowl of water straight from the kitchen tap. It doesn't have to be warm or anything. And then you just squeeze the extra water out, and then we take that kind of damp piece of moss and we start forming it to the inside of the basket. So let's get in close so you can see what that looks like. So here's my piece of moss, and I'm just going to set it right down on the bottom there and make sure it's just, you know, nice and secure. And then once we work our way up the sides, let me show you one more piece. It doesn't have to be perfect at this point, but you want to take that piece of moss and try to poke it in some of the openings there so it stays like, you know, kind of formed that way. This is definitely the most time-consuming part of this project, and it can be a little bit frustrating if your moss doesn't stay in place, but just stick with it. You will eventually get there. But you can see right here, like from the side, how I'm just kind of poking that moss through a little bit. It usually stays. All right, I've got it all lined with moss, and I don't think I mentioned that I do like to leave a little lip around the outside like this. That way in the end I have something to kind of tuck over the top of everything, and it kind of makes it look really finished. And also, this preserved sheet moss is not living moss. I get asked that quite a bit, like how to maintain the moss and how to keep it alive. Like, do I mist it? You don't have to do anything to it because it's not a living thing. So now the next layer is burlap, and you can get burlap at a craft store. They come in rolls, usually at your garden center. This is actually a burlap sack that one of my concrete pieces that we put in our garden came wrapped in. So I'm going to cut it into a few different pieces, and that's going to be our next liner. So I cut the bag into two pieces to make it a little bit easier to work with, but you just want to ever so gently place this on the inside. And what the burlap does is, as the moss dries, it has something to dry onto, so it kind of adheres to the burlap a little bit. And so, oh, it only took one piece. How nice. You do want to be careful though, so you don't dislodge your moss. And I do leave all of the excess hanging out the sides until I'm completely done, and then I'll trim everything. So the next layer is just a piece of plastic. You can use anything, like a plastic bag. This is a heavy duty garbage sack that we use like out in our barn. So I'm just going to open this up real quick, and this is a pretty good sized bag, so I think I'm going to cut this into a smaller piece as well. All right, so now the plastic goes in, and then I've got a box cutter somewhere here. If you are putting your basket or your container inside, you can leave it without drainage holes. I do not recommend that for beginners. But if you have it outside, or if you want it to be able to drain, which is the best for the plants, just use a box cutter, reach down in and just make a slit, like a 1-inch slit at the bottom. There, that will keep the plants happy, and it'll keep all the other water and soil and things from leaking out the sides. All right, at this point it looks like kind of a huge mess, but it actually makes it easier in the end just to leave everything. So now I'm gonna just take my potting soil, and I'm just using regular potting soil for this project for the type of plants I'm using. Push that down in and add a little bit more. Okay, so now let me clear off the rest of my workspace, and I'll get all the plants up here. So for this container, I'm kind of going for a kind of sophisticated fall look. I don't know if that's a thing, but to me, it looks like a sophisticated color palette. I've got some really pretty variegated ivy right here. It's called Goldchild. I thought that that would be really beautiful against the moss, and the fact that it has a little bit of yellow variegation will make it stand out. Then I've got some Osaka pink cabbage, ornamental cabbage, which looks really pretty with the Persian Shield. So check out this color combination right there. Isn't that beautiful? So the Persian Shield is kind of a tender perennial, and so it will last through a pretty hard frost, but you can bring it inside. That and the ivy in this arrangement would make great houseplants. So in the end, I could clean out my cabbage and then my white pansies here, and I could have a nice indoor house planter. And yes, I do have white pansies up here too. I have an enormous amount of plants up here, and they're definitely not gonna all fit in this container. I mean, I could probably make them fit, but I don't think I want to go there. So what I'm going to do is just kind of plant it up. I'll show you in the end what it looks like and kind of my thought process, and then I'll show you the next step with the basket. Planting is all done. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I was able to fit every plant except for 3 in this container that I had sitting on this table. But I think it's good because in the end, like I said, I'm going to pop the cabbage and the pansies out, and I'm going to let the rest of them fill in and be a houseplant planter. And container arrangements in the fall don't need a ton of room to grow, so I think everything will do really great. So now I've got all of this to deal with. I've got the excess plastic and burlap that I need to cut. So I'm going to cut all the way around, but I'm going to leave about 1 inch or so of a lip so that I have something to tuck over the edge of the plants just to keep everything nice and like contained. Oh, I cut the plant like I just said to not do. Dang it. I wonder how easily this would root in here. We'll try it. So now you can see that lip that I have left over. So you just take it and you just tuck it in all the way around. So this is where having that extra little bit of moss hanging over the edge is really handy. I didn't actually leave enough, but you can see, especially if I twist the container, you can see the little bit of moss I left right here. You can kind of fold that right over kind of the infrastructure of your planter, kind of the mechanics, and that way you won't be able to see it. So I do have a little bit of excess moss left over. If you didn't leave enough like me, you can always like get a little bit more wet moss and just form it right around the edge. Oh, it looks so fancy. I love it. So it's all done and planted, so now I just need to take it out of this can. This is absolutely beautiful. I love it. And the basket was beautiful in and of itself to begin with. And when you start with a really good piece like that, I think it makes all the difference. And it's not a hard thing to do to make it look like this. It's just kind of a long process, you know, gathering all the supplies and then all the steps there are to get it done. But I'll be able to enjoy this for quite a long time, given the fact that a couple of these plants are really good for inside the house. So now I'm gonna go find somewhere to hang it. I didn't even do this project with an end goal in mind. Like, I have no idea where I'm gonna go hang this. I was just so excited about the way everything looked, and I could kind of envision what it was gonna look like. So I'm gonna run around the garden and find a space, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so I went all around the house trying to decide where I wanted to put it, and I could not figure it out. So I went down to the garden center and got one of these stands, which makes it very versatile. So I can put it right here, enjoy it right in front of our kitchen door every time I walk by. And if I decide I want it somewhere else, or if the lighting isn't quite what I think it is right here, I can always move it. So this arrangement right here will want part sun, probably best for morning sun, not the blazing hot afternoon sun. Even though we're going into fall, it's still kind of warm this time of year here in Eastern Oregon anyway. We've got a few days in the high 90s coming up still. So anyway, I've got to be kind of protective of the ivy and the Persian Shield. So anyway, I will just be able to water this normally like most of my other hanging baskets because it will drain, so I don't have to worry about that. And then hopefully in the future, if all goes well, I'll be able to show you what it looks like once it's inside. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.